Hi there. I'm Aileen. My husband used my name to pay off his parents' $325,000 debt, then tried to kick me out of the very house I paid for. I thought I was building a future with someone. I didn't realize I was just a signature, a stepping stone. What kind of man does that to his wife? And what kind of family watches it happen? Have you ever felt blindsided by the people you trusted most? Have you ever questioned if your love was ever real or just convenient? What time are you hearing this? And where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. I truly want to know. The morning light streamed in through the kitchen window, golden and harmless. I was sipping my coffee, half listening to the sound of Lyle clanging dishes behind me, when he slid a stack of papers toward me. "Just a quick signature, babe," he said, flashing that boyish smile that used to make me forgive everything. He said it was for his parents' insurance, some hospital paperwork that needed notarizing. "They're drowning in bills, Aileen. It's tearing Dad apart," he said, rubbing his temples like the world sat on his shoulders. I hesitated, holding the pen midair. "Why does it need notarization?" I asked, eyeing the dense block of legal text. He leaned down, kissed my forehead. "Don't worry, it's just a formality. You know how the system is. Red tape everywhere." And just like that, I signed. A small decision wrapped in love and obligation. I didn't know I'd just opened a door I wouldn't be able to close. Later, he hugged me from behind and whispered, "You're my rock. I couldn't do any of this without you." I smiled, trying to feel secure in those words, but as I watched him leave the room, something tightened in my gut. A week passed, and dinner had become a battlefield of silences. That night, he poured 2 glasses of wine and finally looked up at me. "So, about my parents?" he began. "They're in deeper than I thought." "How deep?" I asked. Fork paused midair. 325,000, he said, too casual, as if the number wasn't life-altering. "But don't panic. We can handle it if we act fast." My breath caught. "We? I mean, just temporarily. We'll figure it out like always. You've always been great with money." I nodded slowly, swallowing back the rising tide in my throat. I heard myself agree, because what else could I do in that moment? My husband had just said "we" in a way that meant you. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Lyle snoring beside me. My phone lit up with a text from Jessica. "Call me when you can. Be careful what you sign." My stomach dropped. Jessica never liked Lyle. Years ago, they'd argued over a loan that mysteriously became a gift. Back then, I dismissed her as bitter. Now her words hung in the air like smoke. I got up and walked to the home office, opened the drawer where we kept spare copies of documents. My fingers found the one I signed last week. Same letterhead, same layout. But one sentence stood out now. "Transfer of interest in residential property to designated party." I read it again and again. My chest tightened. I wasn't losing sleep yet. But something had started keeping me awake. Tessa stirred her iced tea with the kind of precision people used when they were about to break bad news. We hadn't seen each other in weeks, so lunch downtown felt overdue. But the moment she leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper, I knew this wasn't about catching up. "Hey, weird question," she said, setting her fork down. "Why'd you submit a title transfer for your house 3 weeks ago?" My fork stopped mid-cut. "I didn't." She blinked. "Aileen, your name's on it. The signature's yours. I processed it myself." A chill crept up my spine, coiling around my lungs. "Can you show me?" Tessa hesitated, but she was more friend than banker now. She slid her phone across the table. My eyes scanned the document, heart thudding harder with every word. It was the same form Lyle had handed me. But the version she showed had pages I never saw. I stared at my signature, fluid, confident, unmistakably mine. It felt like being punched without warning. I left the restaurant before dessert. Back home, I tore through our filing cabinet until I found the original. It was thinner. A decoy. I laid both side by side on the table, watching ink betray me. The voice in my head screamed, "How could you be this careless?" I remembered standing in front of that notary, Lyle's hand on my shoulder. I remembered his joke. We sign our lives away every day and don't even notice. I had laughed. God help me, I had laughed. I was still at the kitchen table when the email arrived. Subject line, warm thanks. The body was worse, just one line. Thanks for the warm bed. I'll keep it warm for him. M. Attached was a blurry photo, my kitchen, my coffee maker, my backsplash, a woman's hand holding a mug, French manicure gleaming in the morning light. I clicked on the sender, macy.brenner@gmail.com, mail to macy.brenner@gmail.com. The room tilted. I slammed the laptop shut like it might burn me, but the words were already etched in my mind. My house, my bed, my husband, my skin flushed with shame, then fury. She was laughing, at me, at my stupidity, at my trust. Dinner was silent. Lyle sat across from me, shoveling lasagna like it was any other Thursday. You okay? He asked through a full mouth. I nodded, eyes locked on his. Fine. He chewed, he swallowed, he smiled, like nothing was burning. I smiled back. Later, when he was brushing his teeth, I reopened the laptop and forwarded the email to a private legal account I had set up years ago for my freelance contracts. I didn't include a message. The subject line read, Future evidence, do not delete. I didn't sleep that night, but I didn't cry either. The charity event at the community center buzzed with polite laughter and the clinking of wine glasses. I wore navy blue, not because I felt bold, but because black would have given too much away. After the email, the silence with Lyle, and the forged signature, I needed something normal. A crowd. Lights. People who didn't know what I had signed or what I had lost. That illusion shattered the moment Macy entered. She didn't belong there. No one had invited her. But she walked in like she owned the place. Red silk, hugging every curve, heels clicking like a countdown, champagne already in hand. I felt eyes shift around me as her perfume wafted in, sharp, citrusy, entitled. She didn't come straight to me. She made sure to pause, greet a few donors, flash a smile, and then she turned, walked toward me slowly, and said just loud enough, They chose me, not you. I guess some of us know how to make a home feel alive. Gasps didn't echo. It was subtler than that. A tilt of heads, a drop in conversation. I stood still, blinking, hoping I misheard. But her smirk told me I hadn't. I didn't reply. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction. But inside, something splintered. My spine held me up, but my breath betrayed me. Short, ragged, shallow. I left without dessert. At home, I didn't speak. Lyle asked how the event went. I said I had a headache and locked myself in the study. He didn't press. He never did. Only when it mattered. That's when Tessa's voicemail came in. Hey, I didn't want to text this, but you might want to check your secondary account. Something's off. I opened my laptop with hands colder than they should have been. My heart had already prepared for something ugly, but not this. Over $6,400 in new charges. A Nordstrom receipt, designer heels, silk robes, perfume. A West Elm order, bar stools, bedding, accent chairs. Every purchase time-stamped within the last week. None of it mine. The account was my emergency fund. Only a handful of people even knew it existed. I never used it, not unless something truly collapsed, and I never gave anyone access. Not even Lyle. Only one person had been around lately. Alone. In my kitchen. With a mug. Macy. I stared at the screen, bile rising. My palms burned from gripping the edge of the desk. Betrayal didn't even feel like the right word anymore. This was something colder. Crueler. A violation in the space where I had once felt safest. My phone buzzed again. Lyle asking what I wanted for dinner. I didn't answer. Instead, I opened a folder on my computer. I started saving screenshots, bank statements, purchase logs, the email, the photo. I printed every piece of it, 3 copies each, slid them into a file marked Macy Breach. If they thought I'd lie down, they picked the wrong woman. I I stared at the last line on the Nordstrom receipt. Thank you for shopping with us, Monsieur Brenner. I didn't cry that night. I started building. I stared at the computer screen, the glow tinting my face in sickly blue as line after line confirmed what I couldn't unsee. Macy Brenner, if that was even her real name, had a record. 2 states, 3 aliases, 1 conviction sealed, the others public enough for someone like me to access if I knew where to look. Marriage fraud, identity theft, civil suits that screamed manipulation and settlement money. She didn't love men, she hunted them. My fingers curled against the desk edge as I whispered to no one. He didn't fall in love. He made a deal with a weapon. I should have known, or at least questioned, but I was too busy playing the role of the wife, loyal, forgiving, responsible. Lyle hadn't been seduced. He'd been complicit. No one lets that kind of danger into their life by accident. The Brenners hosted a family dinner that Friday, a ritual I once endured with polite nods and dry wine. I showed up in black, no pearls, no smile. The dining room was dressed in overcompensation, crystal vases, silver cutlery, linen napkins. Lyle raised his glass, tapping it lightly. To legacy, he said. To preserving what belongs to our family. I didn't flinch, but when he added, some things aren't meant to be shared, my fork paused halfway to my mouth. And by that, I said, you mean the house? He didn't deny it. He just smiled, the way men do when they think they've already won. This house, he said, has always been for the Brenner bloodline. It's more than walls. It's heritage. I looked around the table. No one blinked. Not his father, who once told me I was just the decorative type. Not his mother, who asked if I planned to keep working, now that Macy's stepped up. I stood without another word. Back home, I didn't change out of my dress. I didn't pour wine. I didn't cry. I locked the office door and began collecting. Marriage certificates, tax records, original deeds, notarized copies. I opened a secure cloud folder and started uploading everything. My legal training kicked in, but this wasn't about defense anymore. It was about offense, about preparation. I changed passwords. I rerouted notifications. I canceled shared storage and encrypted my personal devices. Every ping, every click, every screen flash was another stitch in the net I was weaving. Then I walked to the hallway, pulled the family portrait down from the wall. In it, I was smiling, too wide, too hopeful, too fooled. I set it in the fireplace and lit the match without hesitation. The glass cracked as the flames licked the edge of my painted smile. The table was set like a stage, crystal gleaming, linen pressed, steak knives aligned like weapons. I'd grown used to these Sunday performances at the Brenner mansion, where civility was sharp-edged and every smile hid a threat. I sat straight, lips tight, eyes locked on the roasted duck I had no intention of eating. Then Lyle's father lifted his glass. Next dinner, he said, pausing for dramatic effect. We'll host in my house, or should I say, ours. I froze. The wine stalled in my throat. He clinked his glass with Lyle's and gave me a look that was all teeth and entitlement. That's when I knew. They weren't erasing me, they were rewriting history without me in it. I barely made it through dessert. My hands trembled under the tablecloth, nails pressed into my palms, until the sting reminded me I was still flesh and not the ghost they wanted me to become. 2 days later, I was summoned to the hospital. Lyle said it was urgent, his father's final moments. I walked into a room dimmed by faux sincerity. Beeping machines, pale lights, and a strategically placed oxygen mask set the scene. His mother's eyes brimmed with practiced tears. He wants to say goodbye, she whispered. I approached the bed slowly. His father grabbed my wrist with surprising strength. It's time, sweetheart. You know we need to prepare for what's coming. A nurse entered. No badge, no clipboard, just too much perfume, and a file in hand. Just some forms to help transition his estate, she said. Health directives. Nothing complicated. I flipped the pages. Legal jargon danced across the paper, but one clause caught and held like a thorn. Transfer of property held jointly to sole beneficiary, Richard Brenner. They really thought I'd fall for it. I placed the folder back on the tray, looked each of them in the eye, and said, "If you're dying, then die with dignity. Don't drag the law down with you." I walked out without a backward glance, let their machines beep in an empty room. The next morning, Monica stepped into my office, eyes wide. "You need to hear this." She pressed play on her phone. A voicemail crackled to life, Lyle's mother's voice, nasal and sharp. "She's great with law books, but dumb as bricks when it comes to people." Laughter followed, then a hang-up. Monica didn't say a word. She didn't have to. I deleted the family group chat thread from my phone. I'd been polite long enough. They underestimated the quiet ones, the ones who smile through insult, who sign birthday cards with grace even when knives twist beneath the tablecloth. They forgot I listen like a lawyer and strike like a woman betrayed. The cafe was quiet, the kind of place where nothing ugly should exist. Sunlight dappled through linen curtains, catching steam rising from our cappuccinos. Monica stirred hers slowly before speaking. "You know what he calls you, right?" she asked, barely above a whisper. "The bank wife." My spoon froze midair. My stomach dropped, but I kept my face blank. "He says it like a joke," she added. "Like, it's normal." I didn't answer. The words clanged around my skull. Bank wife. A role, a function. Not a partner, not a woman, not me. In 10 years of marriage, he'd never called me by name when talking about the future. Always, "She's handling the mortgage, she's good with numbers, she'll cover it." Not Aileen, just service. I swallowed the bitterness and nodded at Monica like it hadn't cracked something in me. That night, I opened a group chat from work. A meme had been forwarded. Someone photoshopped my face onto a dollar bill with the caption, "She prints it, but doesn't know how to keep it." Another message read, "Rumor is she only survives by spending other people's money." The sender was from a thread tied to Macy's social circle. I could connect the dots, gleeful, deliberate dots, all painted in spite and glitter. I stared at my law degree framed on the wall, the one I earned while bartending nights and commuting 3 hours a day, the one they now said was paid for by someone else's credit line. They weren't just stealing my home. They were dragging my name through the dirt I once climbed out of. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I went silent. In the kitchen, I opened my secure drive and began uploading files. Notarized forms, signed receipts, property statements. I started recording voice memos, descriptions of each transaction, every shady clause. I plugged in my mic and spoke as if I were on the stand, calm and exact. I contacted a forensic financial analyst I knew from a corporate fraud case I'd handled 2 years ago. I asked him if he could trace layered asset transfers, specifically ones hidden through third-party proxies. He said yes. I said, "Bill me." Then I called a PI, gave him names, locations, timelines. He asked, "How deep you want me to dig?" "Until I hit bone," I replied. Later that night, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror. My reflection didn't flinch. I repeated my opening statement to an invisible judge. "My name is Aileen Carter. I am the legal co-owner of the estate in question, and I have been systematically defrauded by my husband and his immediate family." The mirror didn't tremble. Neither did I. The footage played without sound. A silent reel of betrayal framed by my own living room. Macy wore my robe, pale blue silk I'd tucked away in a drawer she shouldn't even know existed. She laughed, head thrown back, curled beside Lyle in our bed like she'd always belonged there. There wasn't even guilt in their movements, just comfort, familiarity. His hand brushed her thigh like it had done that 100 times before. I didn't flinch, didn't pause. There it was, not a betrayal I feared, a betrayal I had learned to expect. I closed the laptop. Moments later, my phone buzzed. A ping from Instagram. Macy had posted a new photo. She was sitting on our leather sofa, a throw blanket over her knees, cradling a mug I bought last Christmas. Her caption read, "Love means sharing space." The comment stung more than the image itself. He moved on fast. She was just the starter wife. Homegirl didn't see that plot twist coming. Laughing emojis, clapping hands, fire symbols. They weren't hiding anymore. They were celebrating. They wanted me to see it. That night, I stood by the window with the lights on, watching the shadows shift across the lawn. The place I used to call safe now felt infected. I didn't cry. Grief had left weeks ago. In its place was something far quieter, precision. By noon the next day, I was seated across from my attorney and financial advisor. Calm, controlled, not a tear in sight. "I'm ready," I said. "We move forward with the title transfer. I want full ownership. No explanation needed, no theatrics." I signed the papers, then handed them a printed receipt showing I had purchased the outstanding lien on the house last week. Quietly, legally. It had taken 2 calls, 3 payments, and 1 clause Lyle never thought I'd read. Now the house was mine. I didn't wait to see his face. I didn't need the drama. I simply sent 1 text. "You'll want to check who owns the house before you throw me out again." Then I turned off my phone, poured myself a glass of wine, and folded Macy's Instagram post into a manila envelope labeled Exhibit A. The phone call came just past noon. I was eating leftover salad at my desk when Michael, my financial investigator, cleared his throat and said, "You might want to sit down." He didn't need to say more. I already knew something was about to implode. "There's a second mortgage," he said, "signed 2 months ago. Lyle listed the house as collateral again, but the receiving entity is a shell company tied directly to..." Macy.I didn't blink, didn't even curse, just stared out the window as condensation ran down the glass like little escapes. I didn't just lose trust, I nearly lost the roof over my head. To the woman who borrowed my robe, my husband, and now my damn mortgage. That evening, I sat across from my attorney and a handwriting analyst. The date on the document matched the weekend I was out of town for the annual law conference in Denver. There were receipts, plane tickets, a dozen witnesses. The signature on the transfer? Perfectly forged. The notary? Fake. I clenched the arms of my chair. My voice was calm, but sharp enough to slice through steel. They forged my name. On my house. My attorney leaned forward. "We have everything we need." "Then file. Tonight." The rest unfolded like clockwork. I returned to the house, my house, without a word to Lyle. I changed the locks, installed a security system that notified Miwa, not him. A bold red legal notice was taped to the glass door, declaring a formal freeze on all transactions. No sales, no transfers, no entry without court permission. Inside, I gathered every object that still held a trace of me and boxed them. The rest could rot. That same night, Macy tried to use the joint credit card at a high-end boutique. Declined, then again at a hotel bar. Blocked. I sat on my sofa, sipping from a glass she once touched, and waited for the reaction. It came at 9:13 a.m. the next morning. Lyle was at his office, standing in front of his assistant's desk, when he opened the envelope. The court summons was thick, neatly bound, and printed on paper as white as his face turned when he read it. Fraud, forgery, breach of marital trust. He looked up and saw me. I was walking past the reception area, calm, in heels that clicked with every step. I didn't stop, just met his eyes and offered the smallest smile. He opened his mouth. I raised a brow. He said nothing. Good. Silence suited him. The courtroom smelled like dust and tension. I sat still, back straight, hands folded in my lap as the judge read the verdict aloud. Restitution granted. The fraudulent mortgage nullified. Macy's forged documents condemned as criminal. Lyle was charged with conspiracy and marital fraud. His bond denied. There was no applause, no cinematic gasp, just the quiet creak of old wood and my own breath, steady but detached. Justice had been served, and yet I felt hollow, not from loss, but from the brutal clarity of truth. Justice isn't the same as peace. One comes from the court, the other takes longer. Weeks passed. In my new apartment, cardboard boxes stood half unpacked. I had more space than I needed, fewer belongings than I remembered. I sat on the floor, sorting through old letters. His, mine, ours. Most went into the shredder. The the wedding album straight into the trash. But I paused when I reached my law diploma. Behind the frame, hidden like an afterthought, was his name scribbled in ballpoint. He once joked it was our shared success. I pried the backing loose, tore the paper, slid it into a new frame, one that bore only my name. You can forgive without forgetting, and you can move on while still mourning what could have been. The next morning, I walked into the legal aid clinic downtown. I wasn't there as a client. I sat across from a young woman, nervous, newly separated, eyes darting like mine once had. She asked, "Do you think it's worth fighting?" I didn't flinch. Yes, especially when they think you won't. Later that day, a text popped up from my sister. "Proud of you. Come home for dinner?" I stared at it, then out the window at the fading skyline. Houston looked different now, not brighter, just honest. "I'm not whole yet," I whispered, "but I'm not broken either." I slipped on a coat, turned off the light, and locked the door behind me. And just like that, the house I once built with him faded into memory, as I stepped into one that was finally mine. Sometimes justice doesn't look like triumph. It looks like survival with your head held high. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this: silence can be power, and dignity isn't something anyone can sign away from you. I thought love was built on shared sacrifices, but now I know, real love doesn't ask you to vanish for someone else's comfort. To anyone watching who's ever been made to feel small, invisible, or replaceable, you are not. Stand your ground. Read the fine print, in contracts and in people. What would you have done differently if you were in my shoes? Do you believe betrayal starts with the first lie or the last silence? Let me know in the comments, especially if this story hit close to home. If this video spoke to you, drop a 1 in the comments or tell me where you're watching from. And if it didn't, tell me why. I'd love to hear your story too. If you believe stories like this matter, don't forget to subscribe and join me for the next one.